Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the VDL Top 5 Battles Week 7. We got some incredibly exciting battles this week. This is probably my favorite list of battles we've done in the top 5 so far. I apologize for the late upload. It is college. I'm glad I'm back. Vortex was taking over last week, and then Vortex got really busy, and I was in England, so we just kind of skipped week 6, and you know what, who cares? We are in for week 7. This is getting to the end of the regular season, so a lot of these games are very important, and I promise you, if you watch to the end, there will not be a very long 15-minute black screen, which I apologize was there. I believe I fixed it. But yeah, honestly, let's just get into battle number 5. At battle number 5, we have Magnanime and the Crowbars to the Knees versus a Gamer Person and the Clang Gang. Going into this game in the Victinian division, Gamer was sitting in a very comfortable 3rd place. However, Mug was right on his tail in 4th, and with the same record and only 1 differential less, a win here was very, very helpful to either team. However, I believe they both had already locked in playoffs at this point, if not, Gamer Person at least did. Magnanime was not necessarily out of playoff contention, but they would have to win week 7 and week 8. However, coming off a win in week 6, that was very possible, so this was kind of a do or die game for Magnanime. Starting off on Mag's side, we see a mix of bulk and offense, and kind of a similar team composition on Gamer's side as well. A very defensive opening to the game started with Mag's Frostlass setting spikes, and Gamer's Tinglu setting stealth rocks a few turns later. Gamer's Hisuian Quillfish was able to put in work this game, getting Frostlass to about 15% and chipping down the Slowbro on Mag's side. Magnanime takes the first KO of the game, however, taking out Gamer's Quillfish with a rapid spin from Excadrill, moving the stealth rocks, which was preventing the Frostlass from coming back in. Gamer's infamous at this point Quaquaval starts to snowball, and taking out Frostlass with an Aqua Step gives it a +1 speed and a +1 attack from its Moxie ability. Mag's Sandaconda is able to survive a critical hit Aqua Step because of its Terra Fairy, and is able to paralyze Quaquaval with Glare. But every Aqua Step used is still boosting Quack's speed, and is able to grab a second KO, taking out the Slowbro with Knockoff. Gamer decides to switch out the Quaquaval, as the Para makes it slower than Spectre, even at its unbelievable speed boosting stat. And after a few turns of switching on both sides, we sit with Gamer's Tinglu Toxic at 25%, but with Stealth Rocks back up. A big turn plays out with Gamer's Heatran landing a Magma Storm on the incoming Excadrill, and then is able to take out the Spectrier and Sandaconda with a handful of Magma Storms and Protects. And actually a Power Herb Solar Beam, which I think was unnecessary but was still cool to see. And while Mag's Umbreon was able to take out Heatran with the foul play, Quack came back in and finished off the game. This gave Gamer a huge 4-0 win, keeping them in 3rd, and unfortunately puts Magnanime in a position where playoffs is now impossible, as Foul and Orange play each other in week 8, both of who are fighting for the final playoff spot. I am giving anyone watching right now a brace period and a timestamp on the screen right now because I have not uploaded my week 7 battle. I played my week 8 battle before my week 7 battle, and I'm going to keep this game in, but it's not going to be uploaded for another 2 weeks, so skip to this timestamp if you want to not get spoiled of my week 7 battle. At battle number 4 this week, we have Derpster in the Oakwood Oshawott versus It's Just Matt in the New England Rock'n'Rolla. A second Victini division battle fills our 4 spot with the top 2 teams battling out, Derpster versus me. This was a hotly anticipated game, which we actually played after I played my week 8 game due to scheduling. Derpster has gone undefeated this season, and I have gone undefeated since my week 1 loss, with both teams looking relatively equal on paper. I don't think there was either team that had the better matchup. I was itching to get this win. Even though it's practically impossible for me to take first place from Derpster, I still wanted to secure second place and give Derpster his first loss. We see team sheets that are relatively expected, with me bringing what is probably my best 6 Pokemon, and the 6 most likely for me to bring, with Derpster bringing 5 Mons I expected, but opting to leave out Corviknight for his Terra fighting Hisuian Avalugg. A fantastic lead for Derp sees Jolteon sitting in front of my Manaphy, forcing a switch into my Clefable, taking a ton of damage from what looked like a Specs Volt switch, going into Ogerpon Cornerstone, forcing a second switch from me into Forretress. A strange switch into Garchomp on my Forretress as I set a layer of spikes had me switch into my Manaphy, as Garchomp sets a substitute and does a substantial amount of damage with Earthquake before my Manaphy is able to set its own substitute. We break each other's subs, with Derpster setting up my Milotic and me opting to stay in with my Manaphy. I see a very good time to set another sub and try setting up Tail Glows, as a +3 Energy Ball 2-hit KOs Milotic, but we do see the haze come out from Milotic and Derpster's side. A very back and forth few turns allows me to regain a ton of health on my Manaphy because of its leftovers, as there is very little Milotic could do to break my substitutes. Ogerpon Cornerstone did come in after Milotic does eventually break my Manaphy's sub. However, I sub again on the switch, which allows me to take out the Ogerpon with a +3 Scald and a Burn, ending the encounter with my very physically defensive Manaphy at 40% HP, however also +3 special attack and behind a substitute. Jolteon comes in for Derp to break the sub, and Derp decides to then sack his Garchomp, leaving my Manaphy subless and at 17%, but giving Manaphy its second KO. A defensive few turns go by, which ends up with my Fortress at just under half health, and Derp being able to set Stealth Rock with Avalugg, but my Goldengo getting Milotic down to 10% HP. Derp makes a great read and gains a ton of momentum, keeping Milotic in on my Goldengo and recovering, as I switch out my Goldengo expecting Jolteon to come in and take the Thunderbolt. I'm able to get my Clefable back into just under full HP, while removing the specs on Jolteon with knockoff, making sure it can no longer switch back in safely because of my layer of spikes, which in fact ended up happening, putting the game strongly in my favor at 6-3. I elect to sack my Ogerpon to get as much chip damage on the Avalugg as possible, assuming my Manaphy could deal with the Milotic on its own. However, a Mirror Coat from the Milotic then takes out my Manaphy, which was a hugely important turn, making it to where I had to predict well later on in the game to beat that Milotic. A few turns go by and that prediction is properly made by me, as Goldengo uses Thunderbolt instead of Shadow Ball or Make It Rain, properly predicting the Milotic to come in and being able to take it out. This game was not over, however, as Iron Valiant comes in and clicks Swords Dance. Knowing that my Goldengo was scarfed and it would not die to a Thunderbolt, Valiant is able to take out my Goldengo with knockoff, and because of the crit body press that brought my Fortress down to 40 HP, the only way I could win was with my unaware Clefable surviving a Poison Jab. But thankfully it is able to survive a Poison Jab and take out both the remaining Valiant and Terrifying Avalugg, giving me a 3-0 victory and giving the top of the league Derpster his first loss. At battle number 3 this week, we have Rampardos and the Lotzarella taking on Starry and the Proto Boosters. What a game this was, I'll tell you. I have never seen a longer Pokemon battle, maybe ever. And oddly enough, that didn't actually matter that much, but it was so high on the list because of how interesting the dichotomy of this game was. It started off very quickly, with Ramp's Toxapex taking out Starry's Creamtail with Toxic and Infestation, and in return Starry's Terranormal Lucario taking out Ramp's Landorus with Extreme Speed and Swords Dance, ignoring the Intimidate due to its Inner Focus ability, and putting in even more work, taking out Chestnut with Close Combat and Extreme Speed, living the Body Press due to its Choppleberry. I do have to note what Rampardos now said in the chat at turn 9, and I quote, "This was a quick match and my prep didn't matter at all." Guys, I promise that did not age well. The game now starts to slow down a little bit, with things like Diancie, Cyclizar, and Vaporeon taking a good amount of damage, with Lucario finally falling to Starry's side. This game feels relatively offensive still at this point, where Rampardos' Iron Valiant goes to 33% and gets poisoned, while Toxic and Infestation puts Starry's Spectrier down to 36%. Vaporeon Scald takes out Rampardos' Diancie while standing behind a sub and setting Calm Mind, but Rampardos' Toxapex is able to haze away all of the stat buffs. Hex Spectrier starts really scaring Toxapex as it's paralyzed, but Rampardos is able to get it back to full health safely. And being brutally honest now, y'all, I am not going to subject you to the rest of this game. This game made it to 116 turns. Spectrier eventually fell to Toxic, as does Iron Valiant, but I kid you not, it takes 52 more turns for another Mon to fall. Both teams making very smart and strong switches, with Rampardos using a Regenerator Core and Starry utilizing Wish Vaporeon, where finally Starry's Grafaiai is able to poison Cyclizar with a Poison Jab as Grafaiai falls to a Draco Meteor. It still takes about 20 more turns at this point for a team to find a win, but Starry's Gouging Fire is able to take out Rampardos' Toxapex before falling to its own Toxic, and Vaporeon comfortably took out Cyclizar, giving Starry one of the strangest 2-0 victories I have ever seen, going from one of the fastest to one of the slowest games of all time. Taking the number 2 spot this week, we have Mug and the Sunnyside Suicunes taking on Orange and the Frederick Klefkis. We head back to the Victini division with a playoff deciding game, where Mug sat 4-2, which absolutely did not guarantee a playoff spot, or at least it didn't guarantee a high seed, and Orange was sitting at 2-4, needing at least one win in his next 2 games to save his season, and could not afford to lose with a high differential, especially because Fowl was right next to him with the same record, and they were both fighting for this 8th spot. Part of what makes this game super interesting is that in Week 6, Mug and Orange swapped their entire teams with each other, and outside of a few transactions, they both know a lot of the inner workings of each other's team. We see the strategy Orange is going for pretty early on, with Spike's Quillfish and Trick from Glowking, and Mug's Tinkaton being able to get off a great amount of damage against a few mons. Mug is able to take out the Quillfish in Trick Room, however is severely damaged. After 2 Barb Barrages and a Poison, Quillfish takes out the Ogerpon Wellspring down with it. The few Spikes layered Quillfish start to stat kick in and do some damage, especially against the Tinkaton switching in and out, and Galarian Slowking living on 4% health after a clearly banded Gigaton Hammer, allowing it to switch out again and gain health through its Regenerator ability. A future sight, Galarian Slowking set a few turns earlier, plus Orange's Cursed Sea Titan, was able to take out the Terra Fairy Noivern on the last turn of Trick Room, putting Orange in a very good place, with 2 major threats out of the way. And that seemingly choice band Tinkaton, as it takes out the Sea Titan, falls to its own struggle, because Gigaton Hammer cannot be used twice in a row. It really looks like the end for Mug at this point, as Orange's Hoopa Unbound takes out both the Zapdos and the Muck on Mug's side, timing Trick Room to perfection and leaving Mug with only Screamtail left to take on 4 of Orange's Pokemon. But in one of the craziest events of the season in my mind, Mug seemingly comes back from the dead with a speed boosting, Calm Mind, physical defensive Screamtail, surviving hit from Super Hoopa Unbound through its EVs and Wish, avoiding any statuses from the Tri-Attack Porygon 2, which seems to be a little unlucky, and takes out all 4 of Orange's remaining Pokemon with Stored Power and Dazzling Gleam. It's unclear whether Mug saw this play from the beginning or fell into some luck, however it's clear that the win con was found, and Mug played the end of the game to perfection, a huge win for them and a big loss for Orange, who has to find a way back and has to find a win in Week 8 to possibly make playoffs. And taking the number 1 spot this week, we have Lord Arcanum and the Fickle Fighters taking on Plays for Days and the Swansea Scissors. What an incredible battle to have in the number 1 spot this week. The end of the regular season was heating up in the Shaman division. Going into this battle, Lord Arcanum was 4-2, coming off of 2 losses, and was in a situation where they could have gone as high as 2nd, or as low as not even making playoffs if the rest of their season turned out horrifically poorly. That's how tight the Shaman division was looking. And on the other hand, Plays for Days had the exact same record, and 1 win for either of them guaranteed playoffs, But 2 wins for them means they surely secure the second spot in the table. It was such a tight battle and such an important battle for the playoff standings. A common theme we're picking up in the Shaman division is very quick offensive battles, and this was absolutely no exception. In fact, this battle ended in 26 turns, which means technically a Pokemon fell every 2 turns. And right out the gate, we see Lord Arcanum on turn 1 Click Focus Blast, surprisingly outspeeding Blaze's Cyclizar, probably Scarf, and taking it out. But don't worry, on turn 2 we see Blaze's Volcanion crit a Flamethrower against Arcanum's Indeedee, bringing it to 19% health. We see a very strange play next, with Lord Arcanum clicking Healing Wish on Indeedee, with nothing to actually heal up on their side, where most likely Indeedee would have actually been faster than Volcanion, besides if Volcanion was Scarfed, and could have gotten off a lot of damage instead of falling and making it 5-5. The KOs go back and forth again, as a full HP Donphan comes out on Arcanum's side, and 2 Coast Scissor with Earthquake, but then falling to Blaze's Volcanions the turn after, already making it 4-4. Blaze then makes some fantastic defensive reads soon after, with their Diancie coming in to take a Draco Meteor from a full HP Dragapult, and the Volcanion taking a Tachyon Cutter from Arcanum's full HP Iron Crown. A big Steam Eruption miss on Blaze's side allows Arcanum's full HP Galarian Zapdos to come in for free and knock off Volcanion's leftovers before getting burned. You might have noted that I keep saying full HP, but here's why. On turn 13, a slightly weakened Dragapult comes onto the field, and we learned a super interesting mechanic, as the turn 3 Indeedee Healing Wish, that was played 10 turns earlier, activates and brings Dragapult to full HP, allowing it to live a Flamethrower into a Steam Eruption from Volcanion, and then getting 2 Shadow Balls into Diancie, living the Earth Power, which it would not have been able to do without the Healing Wish, allowing Dragapult to get 1 more Shadow Ball off onto Overquill, and then switch out, keeping a hugely important Mon alive for Arcanum. A few turns pass, as a Defiant boosted, yet burned Galarian Zapdos takes out Blaze's Volcanion before falling to burn damage and Rocky Helmet Sandaconda. Dragapult comes back in and does a huge amount of damage to said Sandaconda before falling, with Iron Crown taking it out in revenge, and then itself falling to Overquill. We are left with Lord Arcanum's only Sneasler left, against Overquill and Diancie from Blaze, as Sneasler clicks Swords Dance on the switch from Blaze, which was the winning turn, allowing it to take out both Diancie and Overquill, giving Lord Arcanum the huge 1-0 victory at the tail end of the regular season. Well, there we have it, guys. That was the top 5 battles of the VDL Week 7. I really hope you enjoyed. Again, apologies for the late upload. I'm trying to get these up on weekends, but when I don't get a ton of submissions, I have to go through all of the battles, and that pushes it back a few days. But I really hope you guys enjoyed. Please drop a sub if you liked it, or give a like if you did, give a dislike if you didn't, and tell me what you would change. I will see you guys in week 8, where I already know we have some crazy battles, and we are going to see things heat up as we go into playoffs.